Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sabbe sankhara anattaniya. For this evening's discourse, I'm reminded to continue on, or rather to fill out a missing piece of last week's discourse. And for those of you who understand Pali would have recognized the gatha, the words in Pali I said after the Namo Tassa. It's like all sankharas are not mine, anattaniya, they don't belong to me, to a self. And this is one of the not only realizations, but one of the methods one can use to develop peace and tranquility in the life, to develop a sense of ease within one's passage through samsara, to develop deep states of meditation, to be able to enter jhanas, and to be able to use that almost mantra as not mine, as a way of penetrating the deepest of the truths and being an arahat, fully enlightened, doing the job. It's one of the, what we call the sannyas, which person can practice in their daily life at all levels. When the Buddha taught the practice for people in a monastery, he asked them to also develop certain ways of perceiving, certain sannyas. So instead of developing perceptions such as what I can get and how I can get by, or perceptions of guilt, or perceptions of fear, or perceptions of just killing time, he wanted people to develop certain perceptions, certain ways of looking at one's experience, for the sake that these experiences lead to both happiness and freedom, and eventually ultimate liberation. And one of those perceptions is anatta-sanya, the perception of non-self. Many people will take that perception and turn it into just a long philosophical dialogue with themselves, to get lost in the Western defilements of thinking. And those of you who've gone along that path before, just to know how the only place it gets you is seeking out the Panadol. It's not a way to penetrate the truth. It's not a way to get ease and freedom in the mind. It's a thicket of thinking. So instead of practicing anatta-sanya, the perception of non-self, as a philosophical discourse with oneself, I'm suggesting this evening to do something which I've been doing for the last few weeks, is always to use the perception, this does not belong to me, not mine. I missed this out of last week's discourse because in mentioning the third noble truth, the way to eliminate craving and thereby eliminate the cause of suffering, the Buddha said that one of the four ways of letting go is chaga. That way of letting go is often described as generosity. And what generosity really means in practice, an aspect of that generosity which I have taken up and used as a practice, is to know that when you give something away, you're not just giving up that object, you're giving up ownership of that object. By giving the donation, by giving up the material things, by giving up the immaterial things, that you are saying that no longer do I own this. And this perception of not ownership, not mine, not belonging to me, is a perception which it is not too hard for you to justify as true and reasonable. Sometimes the perception of a self or a non-self is just too hard for one, and it brings into the mind just so many counter-arguments and so many doubts and so much thinking. However, when we focus on not mine, not mine, not mine, it certainly will encourage us to see something which is patently true, that much of the things which we cling to, which we attach to, which are burdens on our body and our mind, are things which actually do not belong to us. We cannot take them with us. We cannot even take them into the next day with us. However, we try to at all costs. So what are the things we can say as not mine, not mine, not mine? Whatever arises in this moment, even the thoughts which come up into the mind, I say that to these thoughts. These do not belong to me, not to a self. They're Anattaniya. They're not belonging to anybody. They're just like the sound of the kookaburras in the morning. They're just like the caw, caw, caw of the crows. There's no real substance there which belongs to me. So any thoughts or ideas, even great thoughts, even great insights which come up into my mind when I'm doing this Anattaniya sanya, the not mine perception. I say this is just I'm listening to the words of somebody else. I'm just listening to the thoughts of somebody else. And when I start looking at it in that way, I can see the truth in that. So many of my thoughts and ideas I can recognize from the people who have influenced me the most. From the suttas, Ajahn Chah, other great monks I've known, my parents, my lay teachers. It's often well known there's no such thing as an original thought. So where do those thoughts come from? When I listen to some of my thoughts, I can hear my father many years ago. When I listen to some of those thoughts, I can hear TV programs which I used to waste time watching. When I hear some of my thoughts, I can see the newspaper article which I read. I can see the suttas when they're beautiful thoughts. I can see Ajahn Chah. I can't see me. They're not my thoughts. The good and the bad thoughts, whichever ones they are, when I put that label onto them, not mine, not mine, not mine, a strange thing happens. They lose value, they lose importance, and letting go happens. One of the problems with people who try to practice letting go, you cannot do letting go. You watch letting go happen through a proper perspective on the truth. Every time you try to effect letting go, it's more controlling, more activity. It's coming from the self, or rather the illusion of a self. It will never work. However, if you watch thought, it's not mine, not mine. Where did this come from? Where did it go to? Paraphrasing words from the Vimana Watu, or the Peta Watu, sorry, in the story of, or the chapter on the snake, where the parents said that their son who just died, he came in uninvited. He left without permission. Such is life and death. And you might say the same to thoughts being born in the mind and disappearing. Where did they come from? Where did they go to? Very often thoughts come in uninvited. You don't seek them out. They just arise in the mind. and they disappear. And where do those thoughts go to? They're impermanent, subject to cessation. Really, they don't linger. They just create a next thought. And if you can see the fact that these don't belong to you, they're not mine, they're not important, they're not valuable, then the mind will turn away from them. In the sutta which we've just chanted, for those of you who know Pali, you'd have recognized the last sequence, that when you realize that these things are not me, not mine, not a self, the next result is something we call nibbida, which means you turn away from these things. You're not interested in them anymore. In fact, there's a sense of repulsion away from these things. I don't want to listen to this anymore. This is not coming from a self. This is a natural response to things which don't belong to you, which are a burden. You don't go around sweeping up other people's kutis, except mine if you're the upatak. You don't go around eating other people's food, only what's in your bowl. You don't go eating what's in your next monk's bowl. These things don't belong to you. They're nothing to do with you. Because they're nothing to do with you, you don't take them on board as a burden. As soon as you can apply the sanya, the perception, to thoughts, these aren't mine, nothing to do with me. I am not the owner. They don't belong to me. Then straight away the mind automatically, without any other force, decision or command from you, will turn away from that thinking. From nibbida comes viraga, sometimes translated as dispassion, but got the secondary meaning which is more important in this context, fading away. Wouldn't you want all those thoughts to fade away, to start to disappear? Haven't you been tortured by thoughts? The thinking in your mind is worse than the Spanish Inquisition, worse than any torture chamber in the world, because that causes you more pain, much longer than any physical suffering can ever do. And that suffering comes from the thinking mind. If you really want to stop that thinking mind, if you want a very good technique, something which works, then keep on saying to that thinking mind, keep on interrupting that train of thought with the mantra, not mine, not mine, not mine. Interrupting it until it turns the mind to see that perception that is true, all these thoughts, they don't belong to me. They come from conditioning, from past, and they disappear, who knows where. They're not my possessions. I give them up. Fading away of thinking starts to happen. If you want to be someone who dwells in more silence in this monastery, this is what will happen naturally. Why is it that we're obsessed with these things? It's because of attachment. Why is it we're attached? Because of the illusion that these things are important, that they're mine.